Now, Eyewitness Sports.
Welcome to Double OT, episode 48 with Mark Dondero. I'm Yanni Karakis. Spring weather is here. Playoffs are here. Big day on the show. Let's start with the Bruins, who took Game 1 last night in Ottawa, 2-1. 2 goals in the third period to take Game 1. Were you surprised that they rallied for that win?
Yes. Considering in the second period, they had exactly 0 shots on goal. Yes, I'm surprised. Based on the way the games have gone against the Senators this season, they haven't won a game 0-3-1. I think they've lost 7 of their last 8 against Ottawa. This team, despite not having as much talent as the Bruins, I don't believe, overall, they've dominated Boston. So yeah, when you get down 1-0 and you don't have a shot in the second period, I'm surprised that you come back and score 2 goals in the third, in the way that they did, when it looked like they were getting tired in the second. Now, obviously I'm not going to buy that they were just kind of resting up for the third period. It looked like they were tired. It looked like the legs were failing them. And they go out in the third period, score 2 goals.
Yeah.
Tuukka Rask, huge. Let me say that again, huge, because I have my doubts, as everyone knows, about Tuukka Rask, big picture. But in Game 1, huge.
Mentally weak, you like to call him.
Mentally weak, I believe he is.
Do you think he has a run in him?
A run, sure. Can he go all the way? No, I'll believe it when I see it. But certainly a lot of talent and a lot of skill. And last night, it was on display. We'll see where the series goes from here. But now it's a wild card because they haven't beaten them all year. And all of a sudden, you're up 1-0. You win on the road. It's a big win. It's a big boy win. And I'm impressed.
Yeah, I think it sets the tone for the series. By no means do I think this assures them the series win. But if you win Game 1 on the road, you are sort of in the driver's seat. Even if you go home 1-1, you kind of take care of home ice. But the Stanley Cup playoffs, unlike the other sports, I think kind of throw home ice and records out the window. It's kind of a clean slate. But yeah, as you mentioned, 0 shots on net in the second period. And the style of play Ottawa plays with, that 1-3-1 zone, and they prefer to win a game 1-0 or 2-1. They like getting ahead and kind of pounding it in there and just letting the clock roll out. So I think the Bruins did a good job of attacking and getting some shots on in the third period. Obviously, 2 of them went in. And I was surprised because mentally, like, do we know how mentally tough they, I mean, they went on a run late in the season, but I could have seen them once they were down 1-0 after that brutal second period of not getting shots, just being like, all right, tonight's not their night. So they dug deep. And they rallied for the 2 goals.
I think you give Bruce Cassidy a lot of credit. Yeah. That has not been the team we've seen under him. They've had their issues, but they have shown some resiliency under him. And, you got to give him a lot of credit for what happened last night. Obviously, what happened down the stretch. But what happened last night has Bruce Cassidy all over.
And I like that they started McAvoy. They're all in on that. I mean, you can say what you want about him losing a year of eligibility. But
not just started him. 24 minutes of ice time.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
And they were without Krejci and Krug and Carlos. So, they were shorthanded and they won. So, impressive.
We'll see where they go from here. Game 2 is on Saturday. So they have a little bit of a layoff 3 nights. Now, we won't see the Celtics play Game 1 of their first-round playoff series until Sunday evening. They'll face the Chicago Bulls. What are your initial thoughts on this series matchup?
I think it's pretty favorable when you were looking at the Pacers, potentially Milwaukee. Who else was in there? Chicago, I think, would have been a bad matchup. So I don't mind Chicago.
Chicago is who?
I'm sorry. Miami would have been a bad matchup. I don't mind Chicago. They have the 3 big names, Butler, Rondo, and Wade. A lot of those guys are past their prime, not Jimmy Butler, obviously. But so you take that because they have Robin Lopez down low, but they don't, I think, do a lot of things that could cause the Celtics problems. Now listen, it was 2-2 in the season, so this isn't a traditional 8-1 where your 1 seed should just roll over the 8 seed. I think this series goes 6 or 7, but I think the Celtics win it. I expect them to win it. It's not going to be easy because at the end of the day, the Celtics just aren't a 1 seed caliber team. But when I look at the Bulls, Dwayne Wade is 30-something with a million miles on his legs. Rondo's one of those mercurial stars who's in it. He's not in it. Maybe he gets more jazzed up for this because it's against his former team. But they're pretty much a jump shooting team. So I'll take the Celtics as a jump shooting team over them versus a team that can, pound it in down low or get physical with them.
I like the Celtics in this series, but I like the fact that they're playing the Chicago Bulls. I didn't dissect what the other matchups would have been if they had played the Heat or if they had played the Pacers. I like the fact that they're playing the Bulls just for the sole purpose of interest, of intrigue into this series, because I know they haven't won a game in Chicago this year, 0-2 in Chicago this year. Now, one of those games was on October 28th or whatever early in the season. The other one was that game right before the All-Star break, that phantom foul call or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it, with Jimmy Butler and Marcus Smart. So they haven't won in Chicago this year. Okay, make a note. The other thing about this series that always interests me when you're talking about basketball is that the Celtics will not have the best player on the court. Jimmy Butler is the best player for both teams. I think he's the best player.
Better than Isaiah?
I think he's the best player for both teams. Who would you rather have, Isaiah or Jimmy Butler?
I don't know. I think I'd rather have Isaiah.
I think I'd rather have Jimmy Butler long term. I think Jimmy Butler is a better player. I think Jimmy Butler overall has more talent than Isaiah Thomas.
Also, those three guys, I don't know how well they complement. They're all. Wade needs the ball in his hands.
That's true.
Rondo needs the ball in his hands.
And you can make the argument that Isaiah Thomas is a better player, at least right now. But Jimmy Butler's right there. A lot of people would say he's the better player. So if that's the way you look at it, that's interesting to me because Butler, could do some things and cause you some problems. I can't wait to see how they defend Isaiah Thomas. And let's not forget, Dwayne Wade last year, you said he was old and all that, elevated his game in the playoffs, 21 points per game. If he does something like that, you could have some issues if you're the Celtics. I don't know. Rondo had been hurt. He's a former Celtic. There's some intrigue there. He had been hurt. He comes back, had a solid game the other night against the Nets. So I guess who cares?
People who root for the Bulls and a lot of NBA guys just generally say this isn't a very good team. I think they won 41 games. They're an average team.
They're not a very good team.
They snuck in.
But I don't have a lot of good memories of the Celtics playing in Chicago. So for me, with the Celtics being the 1 seed, it'll be interesting to watch them go into a place, a building where they haven't had a ton of recent success and try to get something done. That will be interesting to me. And when you're a 1 seed going up against an 8 seed, typically in the NBA, there's not a lot of things to be interested in. So I'm taking what I can.
Oh, much rather have this than Bucks or Pacers from an intrigue standpoint. Just
especially
name
the Pacers.
Recognition. Rondo, Wade,
right,
Butler.
Exactly. Some big names.
Hoiberg.
Sure.
All right, NBA playoffs starting. The East pretty watered down this year. I think we'd all agree with the Celtics being the 1 seed and the Cavs the 2. Out West is probably where you're going to get your champion at the end of the day, other than the Cavaliers. What are your big storylines? What intrigues you most about the NBA playoffs?
All right, you want a hot take?
Hot take.
Here's
time.
my big one for the NBA playoffs. I think the Golden State Warriors dominate. And I guess, is that a hot? I don't even know. I think they dominate. I think they go 15-1 or whatever it is, 16-1 and win. I think they dominate.
16 wins would do it.
They dominate. They don't lose much, if at all. They roll through all these series. Durant comes back. Curry, they play angry. I think they dominate the playoffs, the Western Conference playoffs, and into the finals. We'll see if Cleveland can turn it around. We all know they sputter down the stretch. We'll see how they do. But I think Golden State really dominates, and I don't see anybody really putting up much of a fight against them. Obviously you have to be interested in that Houston OKC series.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be monitoring the San Antonio Spurs as always, but I just don't. I believe in the talent and the roster and the coaching that the Warriors have, and I think they turn it on like all NBA teams do in the playoffs and rev it up, and they roll.
In the East, I like the Atlanta versus Washington series. I think the Wizards win that. I think the Celtics win, giving them a Celtics-Wizards, and I like Cleveland and Toronto. At which point I think the East can be intriguing. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers get back to the finals. I don't think they win it. I think out West, the OKC-Houston series is intriguing because you have the 2 MVP candidates, Harden and Westbrook, going at each other. I think the Rockets beat OKC handily in that. And then, obviously, the Spurs are always that lingering team that, I think Golden State's probably the favorite, but they're right there with Houston as a team. I think Golden State eventually gets to the finals, and for the 3rd year in a row, it's Golden State versus Cleveland, and I have the Warriors winning. I don't know if I see them doing as well as you do, going 16-1, but, I see them winning for the 2nd time in 3 years, and should be a good playoffs. From a Celtic perspective, I think if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, that's a success. I don't know if they will. I think they beat the Bulls. Whether or not they beat the Wizards or Hawks.
If I'm the Celtics, I would prefer, and I know that's kind of how it is lined up right now, I would have I did not want to see Washington. It's another matchup I don't like.
I'd rather see them than Toronto.
I would have rather seen Toronto.
No.
I would have rather seen Toronto than Washington. I don't like the matchup with Washington. I just don't like it for some reason.
All right, NBA, NHL playoff time, good times.
It's also a good time to be Bill Belichick, obviously,
Always.
because you're coming off of a Super Bowl championship. The spring has sprung, Nantucket, and all of that. He had an interesting conversation with Susie Welch of CNBC. A lot of things talked about during their interview. What was your major takeaway based on what you heard?
I thought it was a terrific interview, as laid back and natural as we've seen Belichick in quite some time. They apparently have been longtime friends. It's in his favorite restaurant in Annapolis, so he's in a comfortable setting for himself. I wrote down a few things. One, his take on Brady, complimented him as always, but saying traditionally not a great athlete, and praising Tom Brady's ability mentally and to make adjustments and mechanics to become the quarterback that he did. Great quote about in-game adjustments. He says at halftime, the game's already 2/3 over because the fourth quarter is actually situational football. I thought that was interesting. Great story about his first year in New England back in 2000. He's trying to set the tone. And he didn't say the name specifically, but I looked up the players. He said the previous year first-round pick walks in 5 minutes late, not in the back, quietly and getting a seat, putting his head down, in front of the room. And Bill just said, get out of here, leave. And the 2 first-round picks the previous year were Damian Woody and Andy Katzenmoyer. Based on that story, I think it's Katzenmoyer, that guy flamed out, and Woody ended up winning a couple Super Bowls. And then some of his team-building things. We know they go to the movies every year, usually whatever Mark Wahlberg movie is out. But I think he was pretty much alluding to team building stuff makes you want to rally around your teammate. And we know he does that thing where they kick a punt and they have a fat lineman try to catch it. So even though you may not work with the lineman every day in practice, you're rooting for that lineman to catch a punt because it gets you like a lesser practice the next day. So anyway, a wide-ranging interview for sure, and I thought a lot of things were interesting, but those were a few.
Fascinating interview. I loved the tone of it, the setting. I loved everything about it. Few takeaways. Number one, Susie Welch. There's no doubt in my mind that Bill Belichick has devoured the book that Susie Welch and Jack Welch, husband and wife, wrote in 2005. It's called Winning, big-time book on management. And Jack Welch, I don't know how well Jack Welch, the CEO of General Electric, and Bill Belichick know each other. Jack Welch, a New England guy, went to UMass. I think he's a Patriots fan. I'm not sure. I'm sure that Bill Belichick has read that book.
So mutual respect.
Oh, he has taken away from that book. Jack Welch was known at one point, it said, I've read this book. He said in the book that they called him Neutron Jack because of his tendency, and he is wildly successful, obviously, worth $750 million. They called him that because he would go in and cut all the employees that he didn't need. The bad employees, the lower 10%, cut them, get them out. Lower 10% employees, managers, get them out. And that enhanced his business. He was cold-hearted when he had to be.
Yeah.
Does that not sound like Bill Belichick?
Yeah.
In a way? Get out the Jamie Collins, the people that are not going to add value to what we're trying to do. Get them out. It sounds like Bill Belichick. I bet he has taken a lot away from the way that management style has been used by Jack Welch, by the way it was outlined in the book, and he's kind of used that in the way he's run the New England Patriots. So that's one thing, and I think he has a lot of. That's why Susie Welch got that interview.
Right.
He has a lot of
How
respect.
do you score that interview? I think she said, "I've known him for a long time. Seems like they're friends."
They didn't go into the
I think
relationship.
They're Nantucket buddies,
Of
and
course.
obviously it's in Annapolis, his hometown. They do the stuff with his dad, the jacket, so all of that tied in. And they both made a good point about the economics. Belichick was at the forefront of cap management. He's kind of the pioneer of cap management in this era, in the free agency era, but. Give me one word, tell me which pops in your head. I mean, he actually responded to an Aaron Hernandez question. I mean, he said tragic or whatever, but he never talks about it.
Yeah.
Even if it's one word, he's acknowledging it.
The other thing I took away was, and maybe I should have thought of this before, but it seems like he builds the Patriots, and the players that he takes, the players that he looks for, are sort of built in the image of his father, in the image of the guys his father coached, of the whole Navy persona, if you will.
Sure.
Tough, smart, disciplined, that's the Patriots.
Right. Yeah.
And, his father kind of instilled that. He talked about how his father kind of instilled that in him, the values, of the life values that he instilled in him, the life values that they were taught at the Naval Academy, and that has become the New England Patriots.
I liked his come-to moment as a as a coach where he found like a formation that they could use. He was with Indianapolis and he was with Detroit the next year against the Patriots, and it worked out. They won big that game, and that's when he realized, wow, maybe I can do this.
Yeah, and he said, you can't always just go with what everyone else does. You have to be comfortable going against the grain.
And I would say this has been a pretty laid-back, fun, enjoying offseason for Bill post-Super Bowl. I think he's starting to enjoy it all a little more than in years past.
Why not?
All right, our last topic, the Red Sox. About 9-10 games into the season, doing pretty well. Not great, not terrible. What are your takeaways as we're entering the second week here?
Well, obviously I'm happy with the way Chris Sale has looked. He has dominated. He has pitched like David Price is supposed to pitch when you make that kind of money. Dominant. A little more run support would help, but I'm not worried about that. The bottom line right now, there is no panic. There is no reason to panic. The baseball season is long. It is drawn out. There is no reason to panic, or I don't even know where the button is at this point. They'll be fine. They keep splitting. I know they lost 3 or 4 against Detroit, but they keep splitting series. I shouldn't say they keep splitting. They split against Baltimore. But this is a team that's going to be fine. They've had the flu. Don't get the flu. It's unfortunate. That's something they'll overcome. They'll bounce back from that. But yeah, they're going to be fine. They still have the MVP candidate, the runner-up to the MVP from last year, Mookie Betts. Once Hanley Ramirez gets healthy, he'll find a niche there in the middle of the lineup. Mitch Moreland can't stop doubling.
He has like 8 doubles.
So great. I can't wait to see once they're kind of up and running and clicking on all cylinders. And all you need is Rick Porcello to just be even close to what he was last year. You'll find that you're in good position like they were last year, winning the division, playing in the playoffs. Yeah,
I mean, they won 93 games last year. You lose Ortiz. If everyone can kind of just rally and maybe get 90% of the production offensively as when they had Ortiz. Even without David Price, Sale is a better version of Price. So your rotation is the same or better. We'd like to get Price back. I don't know if he's coming back this year. Some people start to think he's going to get Tommy John surgery and could be out for the year. But I feel pretty good about the rotation. Pomeranz looked great the other night. We didn't know what we were getting out of him. Erod, as we're taping it, had an outing this afternoon. I think he looked pretty good. So I feel good about the rotation. If Price comes back, great. The bullpen, a little uncertainty right there. Kimbrel still gives me headaches. I don't feel as good about Kimbrel as like the vintage Papelbon days, maybe 04 Keith Folk, Koji in 13. Too many runners on. He can't come in for 4 outs. He doesn't like inheriting runners. I'd like that to shore up a little bit. But the young guys are great. Benintendi filling in for JBJ shows his versatility, and he's hitting, like you said, Moreland. And, Bogey could maybe step it up offensively a little. I think he's maybe had a little bit of setback in the last year.
Koji, we were spoiled when he was rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
He didn't get it. Nobody even
touched him. Yeah. At the age of like 40 or whatever.
Get on base. Let me just say one more thing. This thing with Craig Kimbrel and not being able to come in a non-safe situation or when it's not a clean inning, I cannot stand that. Get that out of my face. I don't want to even think about it or talk about it. That is a disgrace. Have some mental toughness. Be able to. And John Farrell trying to say, well, we're not going to. Eventually, we might get to that, but we're not going to do that in Game 3. Yeah. Give me a break. Okay, give me a break. Find some way to come into a game when you need, especially when the middle relief, there's a big question mark, and everybody keeps talking about, Carson Smith when he comes back and Tyler Thornburg. Fine, maybe they're the saviors. We'll see. But I want to see Craig Kimbrel step it up. If you needed a 4-out save, you're a flamethrower. Find a way to get into the game and deliver for your team. I can't stand it.
It's April, but 1 of 162 is the same now than it will be in September.
I can't stand that mentality.
You got to grab those wins when they're there for you.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
All right, that'll do it for the latest episode of Double OT. Anything you want to add?
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. You going to dress up as the Easter Bunny again this year?
No, I think, what? Again, no. I think Easter Bunnies can be pretty creepy.
Super creepy. We took Paige to one at the mall a couple years ago. Super creepy.
No, I don't even get into that. I don't get into the Easter Bunny thing. It's just creepy.
We'll do a little egg hunt at the
house. We'll do
an
egg hunt. We've done one egg hunt. We'll do another egg hunt.
The issue with the egg hunt is if there's older kids, they scoop up all the eggs, and the little kids get screwed.
You got to manage the ages.
Got to manage the ages, yeah.
Or put them in positions to succeed with the little kids.
All right, we'll see you next week. Catch it all online, WPRI.com, on social media, at Yannick Caracas, at Mark Dondero, and on iTunes, search Double OT.